My guests today are Dr. Gladys Brignoni, the Chief Learning Officer and Director of Force Readiness Command for the U.S. Coast Guard. Gladys, welcome to the program.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
And we're also joined by Brian Burns, the Deputy Assistant Commandant for Command, Control, Communications and Computers and IT, C4IT, and the Deputy Chief Information Officer, also with the U.S. Coast Guard. Brian, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So today we're doing something a little different. As you heard, we have a CIO, but also a Chief Learning Officer, because we're focused today on training and education for federal employees and obviously service members. Now, agencies are turning to online classes and learning technology more than ever to ensure employees have the skills necessary for today and the future. And the training they receive is critical to driving mission success. So additionally, agencies have an opportunity to fine-tune their classes and the skill sets that employees need based on the more and better data that they're collecting. The data also can demonstrate how these education initiatives are impacting mission areas. So with that little bit of context in place, let me turn to Gladys. Let's talk about the Coast Guard's training and education strategy. As a Chief Learning Officer, it's a big job, but talk a little bit about how you guys are getting it done.
Hey, yeah, thank you again, Jason. I appreciate it. So for the Coast Guard, I have the pleasure to be able to lead our workforce as the Chief Learning Officer, and that means many, many things. But one of the things that we are really proud of my team that we've been working together collaboratively is we've been looking at what do we really need to be able to do? What's our education, training strategy, learning, right? Talent management, when you think about the future, not just for tomorrow or next year, but for 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So for the past 2 years, we've been working on that. And last fall, we actually published what we're calling the Modernized Ready Learning Strategy. What does that mean? That really means as how are we looking at an individual and how is that individual going to be taught, learn, educated, developed, again, talent development throughout their whole time that they are in the Coast Guard. From day one, when we recruit that individual, what are we going to be able to teach them? How we're going to continue to develop them until they decide to leave or depart the Coast Guard. So how are we infusing that? And by now, what we've been doing is we're really looking at blended learning, virtual training, right? How is that going to be able to be infused in our Coast Guard? Specifically, what we've done is really in the past, believe it or not, as a Coast Guard, we had not been able to do a lot of that blended training. So we started last year with pushing a lot of these things. And as you know, blended learning means many, many things, right? It could be something on e-learning, right? That you're doing some modules virtually. It could be facilitated online. So all those things. And what we do is we look at every course, look at those performance objectives, right? And try to figure out which courses, which modules really lend themselves to be able to be infused by that modality. I'm happy to report that as bad as things are right now with COVID-19, it really has accelerated really all our development. We started with one course, right, last year, and we have developed now over 50 courses on a blended learning platform. So that's really exciting for us and really has taken a lot of effort working with Brian, right, as our CIO there.
One thing about blended learning, let's make sure we define that. That's both in person, online, it's self-taught, it's facilitator led, it's some sort of I'll make the obvious blend, but walk me through how you guys look at it.
Absolutely, yeah. So we do that. So it could be that it is a part. So let's say at the course we have a lot of technical training, right? Where we're sending our workforce sometimes for 20 weeks of training, right? So we're looking at those 20 weeks and deciding first on that performance objectives that we have, those terminal objectives, which modules, which objectives could be done now via completely online. Could they be done now on by a facilitator, kind of like you and I are we talking there, and having a very interactive discussion, which it really leads to good learning in that regard. It could be self-paced e-learning. It could be a job aid that we've done. So it means many, many things. So, and we have, again, some really good definitions and ways for people to help our instructors be able to develop it.
Let me bring Brian into the discussion, because Brian, if the Coast Guard maybe was not as big into blended learning as they were earlier. Maybe, Gladys, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably a lot of in-person learning. So the shift to online means there's a technology infrastructure that's needed. So Brian, walk me through how you worked with Gladys and her folks to ensure that the infrastructure was there, the technology was there to support this blended learning.
Sure. So one of the first things we need to do is look at how the classrooms are set up and how we can change the technology to support what they need to do. So if you think about it, the traditional room was a classroom setting. You had desktops in the room, and essentially you're tethered to the room if you think of it from that perspective. So one of the things that we did is we started looking at what some of the alternatives are. So we have established in 3 of our classroom sites, we put in wireless networks to start. And then the other thing is then we introduce tablets, so you're much more mobile to go from there. And what that's allowed us to do is actually allow the students to really work and access the content outside the classroom, and then use the classroom time really to practice what they've learned outside the classroom. So just by changing the technology platform and providing a different way to connect into the network, we were able to essentially separate the classroom physical connection to being much more broader. And then the next step from there is the remote learning, not even in or near the classroom.
Was your network, generally speaking, ready for this change? Did you have the bandwidth, the storage, the two-factor authentication? We'll get into more of the specifics, but did you have all these things set up, or was that part of the lift as the strategy came, as Gladys's folks and the Coast Guard put the strategy together, you had to then upgrade the network and make some changes?
So from the classroom setting, this is basically just changing the terminal end of the equipment. So that was relatively not too difficult, not too complex to do. So it's just basically putting in new technology and replacing with the older technology. So we were able to do that pretty well and continue to move things. Going into COVID though, and having to work remotely was an entirely different aspect of what we had to do in order to go away from the classroom and actually provide remote capability elsewhere.
So Gladys, here we are, a year into the blended classroom. Is it working? Give me a sense of kind of how you guys are approaching education and teaching these days, and then we'll get into the COVID discussion a little bit more.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Jason, wow, we've been doing this now really full force, right? For the last 8 months since COVID has hit us, even though we had tried it before. And we really, when we take a look at our training, we're really performance-based. So what we do is we take a look at, once those individuals have finished school, 6 months later, where those individuals now are in the field at the operational unit, and actually now using that knowledge fully, what we're engaging them to figure out based on that survey, talking to their supervisor, and that now the student that has graduated, how are they able, did they capture it? Did they learn the materials? And how is that showing in their performance on a daily basis? So it's early right now for us to be able to, we're just starting to get those surveys, but I will tell you is the current reactions that we have gone right from our other surveys are showing that students, particularly, not that I consider myself older, but more mature, as I'll say that terminology, right, is that we're seeing that the younger generations definitely are really hungry for a blended format, right? And I think you were spot on, right? Particularly as a military organization, the Coast Guard, we really we tend to do more face-to-face, right? So shifting that, it's really a culture shift that we've done. And we're happy to report that, again, that preliminary surveys and results from the training that we've done, right, in a blended format, it's very, very positive. And our students are really selling it for us instead of just us pushing and advocating. So it's really a positive success. And really, Brian and his team has been really critical in being able to support us.
You bring up this idea of the surveys. The pandemic also required you or kind of accelerated some of the actions. Did that also require the instructors, the students to change how they learn? because it's obviously a big difference for you and I to be in the same room, and now we're doing the Zoom thing, and there's an adjustment period, of course, but what did that mean for the Coast Guard?
Yeah, so great question. Teaching online, right? Facilitating online, just like you and I, you're an expert, right? Using Zoom, we're still learning, some of us, right? We don't use this technology in the Coast Guard, right? We use Teams. So every technology is a little bit different and it takes some practice. So we were a little bit concerned, how is our instructors, right? All of those individuals that are involved, right, in the curriculum development, analysis, right, and design, are they going to be able to, are they going to be apprehensive to, are they going to be able to buy in? And at first, people are like, oh, I don't know. But I will tell you that I couldn't be prouder of our team, how they have been able to adjust, right? And learning, everybody has rolled up their sleeves, right? And really embarked on learning more, right? And some of the things we've done is we did bring in some experts to help us be able to set that roadmap, right? Like I mentioned before, we have the Modernized Ready Learning. When we developed it a year ago, we just didn't realize that this COVID-19 was right around the corner, that it would accelerate everything. But we are really making good progress with all of those items, and it's really, very positive looking. And our goal would be is to eventually look at as many courses. Not every course will lend itself to a blended format, right? So it takes some time. So we're teaching our staff to be able to use, the methodology, right? We developed an actual method to try to figure out what makes sense, right? Converting a course. Does it meet all of these check the boxes, right? And if it meets all those check the boxes, it means that course is really suitable for potential being able to be converted. Otherwise, some of the other courses will stay, right, more traditional.
And we're about to take a quick break, but just those traditional courses, have you at the Coast Guard been able to have them during COVID, or has everything been moved online? And then slowly, as things hopefully calm down, you can bring some courses back in person, and then some, as you said, will stay online or e-learning or self-taught or facilitated permanently.
Yeah, so we have over 800 courses that are taught in the Coast Guard, right? Some of those courses are taught by our colleagues, right? Whether they are from DoD, our sister services, or DHS, Homeland Security, right? And some of them, a third of them are contracted out, right? But the ones that we own, absolutely taught by the Coast Guard itself, we are trying to move forward to be able eventually review those and determine whether or not really that's a suitable course. And it could be really, I think what will occur, what I foresee is that some courses really we won't be able though, but maybe if the course, like I mentioned, it may be that it's 3 months, but maybe now only 2 months are done now face to face, right? At the actual residence, and all those other modules are done elsewhere.
All right, I know we're all figuring it out, the same thing. So we will learn more as you go along. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we can continue our conversation. My guests today are Dr. Gladys Bergnoni, the Chief Learning Officer at the U.S. Coast Guard, and Brian Burns, the Deputy CIO at the U.S. Coast Guard as well. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Blackboard on Federal News Network.